Hi everyone, welcome to Happy Connections. If you're new here, my name is Kayla, and here we kind of discuss all things from my journals and just reflections. And so today I will be straight from the journal talking about overthinking because I am notorious for that, for the pre planning, for always worrying, for getting anxious. But as I was reviewing some of my entries, I realized that it was such a long journey of not quite overcoming it because I still do overthink sometimes, and certain people are more likely to get me to spiral than others. But at the end of the day, I am far, far better than I was before. And that has been one of the best things to happen in my life because I used to be really up, high highs, super low lows, and just not sure of myself. I was always questioning myself. And so that was always a really big challenge for me. And so maybe I take a step back here and think about what life is like as an overthinker. And maybe you can relate to it. And if you do, let me know in the comments because whew, it is not easy to show up and share all of your business online, but it is what it is. And for me, I think the most prevalent sign, I think I spoke about some of this behavior in my journals from an older sibling video or an eldest daughter, but always pre-planning or wanting to get things right. I always felt stuck in fear about anything that I was doing in my life. And it didn't even have to be something that was important. Like, I would try to be super efficient. I would try to do things right. And in order to do things right, I would write it down and try to find the most efficient way and think about how it would affect everybody. But it could be like how to get chores done. Instead of just starting, I would say, okay, maybe I need to start downstairs and then work my way up. Or if I start, maybe I should do this type of chore, like cleaning over packing things away. And it sounds so menial, but it would take up so much mental space. And I would be consumed in the correct order for things and what would make sense to do at this specific time. And it would make me miserable. And it would frustrate a lot of people around me because I was thinking about getting it done instead of getting it done. But honestly, it would just make me doubt myself more because I don't think I could have just trusted myself just to get out there and do it. There was always this huge block or delay before I even got something done, which could even be as easy as sending an email. I think I was notorious for that. I would get it, I would receive an email. I would think about all the different ways I could respond. I was like, oh, is this tone too harsh? Oh, am I being clear enough? Is this the right thing to ask this person? And an email should just take less than 10 minutes. And I was spending like half an hour rereading, triple checking. And my time would just fly by. And so when I would recount at the end of the day or reflect, I would be so exhausted because of all the mental energy I was expending. But then nothing would get done. And then it would throw me into another spiral of how to be better and how to think about things. And I was watching videos on how to think about thinking. And I can laugh now, but if you understand how devastating it can be on your life when you can't trust yourself to do very simple things. Yeah, I'm trying to say, yeah. And so I'm looking at this entry here and thinking about being indecisive. At first, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll just leave it up to you. But at a certain point, I could see that other people were just expecting me to come with an answer. And that would frustrate me because in another area of my life, the familial part of my life, I always had answers. And I kind of just wanted more experiences. But then I would like, okay, if I have to do it, then I'm going to make sure to take control of the entire experience with friends or partners. And it would really shift and challenge the dynamics I would have with them. I'm a very high energy person, and so it could come off that I was being a little bit pushy. Maybe I was, because if I thought that I would have to be the one to plan it, then it would just have to follow this specific plan that I spent so much energy and time on. But when I started to relax, because I thought that, other people should have their input, I just became super indecisive. Oh, where do you want to eat? Maybe Mexican, maybe Chinese, Japanese is okay. And then we would also spend way too much time discussing what we want to do or how we want to do it rather than enjoying being with each other. And so I would leave some of these meetings or meetups or engagements or whatever feeling like I didn't interact with that person as much as I wanted to. And then that would leave me to sitting in the night of wondering how I could have been better. I think that's another aspect of being an overthinker, just experiencing things, learning to let go of control sometimes, and then being overly critical about the way things happened in an effort to make them better for the next time. And so that was frustrating because in an effort to appease others, I wouldn't give my opinion at all. But when I did, I was super stubborn about it. So lots of different things there. But I think at the core of it, when I reviewed just the different aspects of my life, whether it be like, working out physically, eating right, getting sleep, my mental health, my emotional health, my social health with others, and my spiritual health, I was afraid of always just doing it wrong. Now, hear me out. It sounds silly, and talking out loud with you right now does make me feel a little bit silly. But in those moments, I would always just think about how to be the best friend or show up in my best self. And so overthinking can honestly lead to a little bit of black and white thinking where I would only say or see one specific way. I would think so much about all the different possibilities that I would come to one very definite conclusion because I thought about all these other possibilities and how they weren't good enough and how this was the best possible solution. And then if it wouldn't work, then I would spiral out again. How I didn't think about it right and how I didn't come to the appropriate conclusion. And it was frustrating because I felt like I was mean to myself a lot of the time. And I didn't want to show up in places unless I felt that it was perfect and that I spent enough time reflecting and engaging. And I would find that to be true in some of my journals. It'd be like, how can we get better? How can we become the person we're meant to be? I was always in conversation with myself. And at some point I had to realize that no amount of reflecting or pre-planning or worrying was ever going to make me live my life, if that makes sense. Like, you cannot plan or think or prepare or whatever for every single thing that's gonna happen in your life. It's simply not possible. It is simply not possible. And so because of that, I would get so frustrated. I was like, I'm not good enough because I didn't think about this specific situation happening. But then on the flip side, when I just let it all go as much as I could, I started to realize that none of it was actually going to ruin me. A really good way of handling this is asking the question, but would I don't know if I could say that on YouTube, I know. Would my world end, quite literally, if I didn't follow this exact pattern? And it sounds extreme because it is extreme. In order to counteract that type of thinking, I would have to say, well, if you're so far on this end, well, is the world going to end if that doesn't happen? And I had to think about that. I was like, okay, if you don't wear that specific outfit, is the world going to end? If you don't cook this meal tonight, is the world going to end? Is everything in the fridge going to rot? Will your sister stop talking to you? Like, that is the way I learned to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, just because something happens doesn't mean that's the end all be all. For most decisions, there's obviously other cases, but my world, for the most part, was not going to end on the decisions I was focusing on and meandering on. I think about which is the best pen to write in the journal. Like, please, just write. Because we spent 15 minutes looking for the right pen. And I have 15 minutes less to share my thoughts before I have to go to this next engagement. And it was just silly. I'm not completely over it yet, but I am so much better than how I used to be, because I would be paralyzed. I would be paralyzed and wouldn't do anything, and nothing would actually happen, and that would be worse, truly. So instead of thinking about giving 110%, a solid 60 is still moving my life forward, is how I had to see it. But really, for those early days, it took a lot of deep breathing, a lot of exercise, because the worry about not following my perfect plan that I thought of so well would physically shake me. And so going to the gym or stretching or doing light exercises in my room would help me release some of that energy, so it's not just getting stuck in my brain. Obviously, another thing is coming to my journal all of the time. The last thing I wanted to do was spend all my time thinking and visualizing and daydreaming about endless possibilities with people, with situations. So much of life is so out of our control, right? You can't decide whether the job will call you back. You can't decide whether that person will respond to your text messages. Don't control if someone will forgive you. That is not how this works. The only thing you can do is deal with your emotions about it. And instead of either being too rash and just talking to people about it, or just trying to jump the gun, or staying physically paralyzed and only mentally thinking of all the worst things that could happen, writing it out felt like I was taking all of those thoughts, putting it in the journal, and releasing it. And so that was really helpful to ease my mind, because I knew that it still existed. And if I wanted to, I could go back and look for it. But it's a perfect trick, because I know myself, if I put something down, I'm not going to pick it back up. So, and it worked every time, and it still works. But yeah, that was one of the ways that I would assure myself as to not keep it in my brain. Well, Kayla, you obviously wrote it down. It's not going to go anywhere. And I would think to myself, yeah, you're right. And clearly, most of the things didn't matter enough that I had to go back to look for it. Isn't that awesome? Like, a vast majority of those situations or thoughts were not so important to warrant me going digging back to resurrect them. And if they were, I would just think about it again later in the day, feel much calmer about it, and actually find a solution that would work. Or just realize that it was not that important anyways. But the last thing I will say is, this is not for everyone. I'm going to just share that. You know yourself. But learning to follow my impulses. This is for my overthinkers. This is if you know what kind of person you are and you need to actually lock in, this is not for you. I needed to become a bit more impulsive. What does that mean? That means instead of pre-planning to the molecule how things would happen in my life, or all the bajillion scenarios, I would just allow things to happen. Whether it would be I'm sitting in a class and a thought for happy connections comes to my mind, I would just write it down. Old me would be like, we're in class, this is only one specific type of attitude, we have to only focus on this one specific thing. And then I would be haunted by the thought that came and went for the entirety of the class, and I'd be distracted. Or listening to a song when I wanted to, or heading out with friends when I said that I would stay inside and, work on other things. Now, obviously I didn't do that every weekend, but taking up invitations to experiences that would put me outside of my zone of control helped a lot with the overthinking, because it gave me trust in myself that I could still figure out a way. Now, obviously, if I needed to be home for a giant exam at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going out to explore the night world at 1 a.m. But if I had nothing serious to do the next day, then what was a later night gonna really stop me from achieving? Nothing, except for the plan I had already set for myself. Instead, it would just offer me the opportunity to interact with the people I care about and to have a night that will not be replicated again. But I can still do the things I plan to do. And so, yeah, right here from the journal. So if you're still here, thanks for watching. I know most probably won't, but comment a pen if you have watched until the end of this video. But thank you for joining me. Feel free to like the video, and subscribe if you're interested in more conversations. So yeah, ciao.